I'll also bring in the former IPS officer who's with us, Mr. P.K. Jain. Mr. Jain, if you could put this into perspective, as far as when there are governments in power, in your years of experience, is it common to get requests to snoop on political rivals, to snoop on businessmen and any persons of interest, especially for a government?
Hi, good evening, Deepak. I would say that this has become more of a norm rather than an exception. The information gathering business has gone to this level that unless you get some kind of a technical intelligence in the form of either snooping or phone tapping, etc., it becomes difficult to get the inside information. There are a lot of political developments, a lot of criminal developments, a lot of law and order ramifications. So there are areas where the phone tapping can be done legally after obtaining a proper sanction from the concerned authority. And there are areas, because we have these snooping tools, there are areas where snooping becomes absolutely illegal. You've already seen the case of the Delhi government.
What's the procedure? Mr. Jain, if you could tell our viewers, what is the procedure for a government to really, tap into somebody's phone? And, after you tell us the procedure, tell us the protocol to be followed at the government level or at the police level, so that there is transparency that's maintained, so that, it does not become as if, they're snooping or they're, tapping phones at the behest of any leader, any government.
See, now in this case, you see, the officer who had retired from the SIB was reappointed as the consultant to the government, and there are officers who were willing to oblige the government. In my opinion, one of the remedies that could now take place is, see, that these things will continue unless there's some kind of a, very strong action is taken. In my opinion, the people who were recipient of this information were aware that this information is coming from phone tapping. So I would personally feel that even the Home Minister or the Chief Minister, whoever was recipient of this information, should also be made an accused in this case. So we always get down to the police officers who are more vulnerable because they have to carry out somebody's beck and call, and it becomes difficult in the police department to survive without being on the right side of the political leadership. We've seen a number of cases.
Hence, I'm asking you, what is the process and what's the protocol to be followed here, Mr. Jain? If you could tell us that, we could probably get a clearer picture as to what kind of pressure they're in. But give us a little bit more perspective. What is the process to be followed here when you have to tap somebody's phone? And what is the protocol that needs to be followed by a police officer?
See, the intelligence chief can give the permission for phone tapping for 24 hours. Beyond that, if the phone tapping has to be done, it has to go to the Home Secretary. The Home Secretary has to authorize the phone tapping of a particular individual or a set of individuals. It may be a running crime situation. It may be a law and order situation. It may be something to do with the public safety. So, and there are limits. He can also grant permission for phone tapping for a particular period. After that, if the phone tapping is required to be done, then again a second permission, for continuation, some permission has to be sought. So the procedure has been well laid down in the under the Indian Telegraph Act, and the courts have pronounced various judgments because this is directly impinging on the right to privacy. So the Supreme Court has also come down heavily on this, that nobody's phone can be tapped unless proper protocol is followed, as you said, taking permission from the Home Secretary. So that is the procedure. If anybody violates that, if anybody goes beyond 24 hours...
Okay, so if there is this protocol in place, if there is this protocol that you mentioned in place, are there any protocols also to protect people from being victims of, illegal phone tapping? Because if there is a chain of command that needs to be followed, and when it's done without this chain of command, how does identification happen really here? Is there a possible way?
No, it becomes very difficult. So it has to be an internal audit mechanism where the senior officer from the department who's in charge of this equipment has to ensure and has to see as to what kind of phones are being tapped. As you have in this case only, Mr. Lanka has just mentioned, it has happened at other places also, that eventually the snooping team also snoops on the mobile phones or phones of some individuals who may be businessmen, who may be people of a high profile, and they can be blackmailed or for their own financial gains, etc. So the officer who's in charge of the snooping mechanism has to ensure by various checks and methods, by making entries in the logbook, etc., as to whose all phones are being tapped, and whether all those phones being tapped a proper authorization has been sought or not. If that is not being done, then obviously the senior officer in charge is also equally responsible, which has happened in this case, where a DCP and the officer of the level of additional director general are being laid accused.
Yeah, precisely. And also these arrests now, and also the hunt for some of these officers is on just weeks ahead of the election. Syed Asad Abbas, what do you think the political ramifications of this can be?
Firstly, Deepak Saab, thank you very much for putting the Southern stories right there on the prime time on the national media. Thank you for this initiative, sir. Now coming to the political ramifications, I've always believed, Deepak Saab, with great power, there are great responsibilities and equal accountability. Back then when the Bharatiya Rashtra Samiti was in power, sir, we had Kalvakuntla Chandrasekhar Rao and his son KTR, who I thought are running the government in great books. I never ever could think a so-called progressive developmental politics, those who speak, be it KCR or KTR, would come to the front of phone tapping. In one of these very interesting interviews or podcasts, I had heard KTR speaking of his phone being tapped by Centre, by Modi ji, by the Bharatiya Janata Party ruling dispensation. It is quite amazed, I'm quite baffled to see the same thing being done by his own government. This is very unfortunate. I think politics has led a not so ethical front. I know we do hear everything is fair in love, war and politics, but coming to this news, coming to this forefront is absolutely not okay. To me as a millennial, I really looked up to the Telangana Rashtra Samiti or the Bharatiya Rashtra Samiti and the able leadership of KCR and KTR. But like they say, in the world of politics, everything is dirty. This is not acceptable, unwarranted, is not okay. So I think Revant Reddy is absolutely right in weeding out, getting to arrest all those leaders who are involved here, all those so-called police officers who are there to implement law and order are also part of this gimmickry. Whereas we do have a couple of them who are absconding, but I'm sure they will be brought to the books. I would largely say, being an election candidate in the year 2018, politics has come to this. Let me share a personal incident that took place. I would say in the year 2018, when I was contesting the Karnataka election, there is a trink sound which comes through, sir. When I did my research, I did find that there is a possibility where phones of individual candidates can be tapped. If this is the precedent that is set by any political party, it is absolutely not okay.